and is still.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Inferno cast. I, of course, am Inferno Fox, the host and the head collaborator for the Inferno Fox gaming channel. And we, of course, are here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. We're going to be celebrating a fantastic franchise series of surprisingly really good video games. Maybe they started out a little rocky, but their last few have been pretty good, I have to say. And their newest release is a certain foul-mouthed bunch of 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds. I think they're in fourth grade still. That's going to be the South Park crew. But before we get into that, let me introduce my fantastic cast and crew. And we have here Stormrosesky of the Twitch and YouTube channels Stormrosesky. Storm, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here this Tuesday evening.
And a pleasure always to have you join us. And next up is the fantastic Simbu Darkfang. He's a main actor over at Basement of the Dead and the best player at Fork Knife BRs. There will be no discussion about this. We have Simbu Darkfang. Simbu, thank you so much for joining us.
I'd like to dispute that claim. I suck, but always great to be here and love talking about Simpsons Hit and Run.
There it will be no disputing the fact that you really love Simpsons Hit and Run. Next up, we have Hardicus, Hillbilly Hardicus. He's a good friend and a resident Hill slut. Hillbilly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
We also have Astrimedes. He is a developer and co-owner of Second Place Games. Astrimedes, thank you for joining.
Happy to be here.
And last but not least, we have my partner and partner in crime, Jamie Owls. Jamie Owls 87. We're going to be joining and possibly doing a new set of videos monthly, games that we're playing, and we're going to be talking, featuring these particular games, maybe for like a Sunday release, and just saying hello and thanks again to Jamie Owls for joining us. But we're going to jump right into our main topic, but actually, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's do a pre-discussion topic before we get into South Park. This one's a little bit of a downer, but it's really topical, and that is the recent layoffs in the video game industry. And I touched upon this on one of my recent videos on Inferno Fox Gaming, specifically the subject of the difficulties being a developer. The link to the video for this will be in the description below. Now, 2023 was an unprecedented year for layoffs in general in the video games industry. And 2024 very quickly followed suit. We had over 10,000 jobs lost in the industry in 2023 alone, with 8,000 more in January and February 2024 alone. And this has impacted studios like EA, Epic Games, Meta, PlayStation, to even like game engine software like Unity and other miscellaneous software groups like Twitch, Discord, and more. Other studios just have closed down completely, like Ubisoft London, Sony's London studio, Deviation Games, and a lot more. And of course, there's a lot of reasons for these layoffs. You got the event We Shall Not Give by Name for fear of demonetization and the loss of algorithm, Schmovish Mein Schmeen. And with that created a sort of hiring bubble in all the tech industries, video games among them. And game studios also put a lot of eggs in the live service games basket, to which has given like mixed results at best. Yeah, because after all, not every game can become like a Fork Knife or even like an Apex Legends or what have you. But cited among chief among these many reasons is the rising costs for the AAA game development industry. So I'm going to ask you guys, and I'm going to Hardicus, I'm going to bug you with this first. Just your general thoughts about the layoffs that have been occurring in the video game industry. What are your thoughts, Hardicus?
I think it's a terrible thing. First of all, I mean, how many people's lives are affected by that? And I do think one of the biggest things is the worldwide event that took place. There was a major growth during that time, and it just hasn't really kept up. I don't mean to sound conspiratorial theory or anything like that, but it also, to me, sometimes seems like some of these CEOs are just making it so that the profits look bigger at the end of the year. And, they're raking home $20 million a year, yet, they can't keep on some of these game designers that are making a fraction of that. And it's really, to me, it's the people and their families that get affected by, them just kind of saying, well, we didn't perform so great, and I need a $10 million bonus, so goodbye.
Yeah, it's I feel like the drop of employees is like the easiest cord to cut, and it's the easiest amount of savings, the quickest cost savings that they can trigger, so that you got these CEOs with these NFL player like contracts to where they'd rather meet all the stipulations of said contracts so they can hit all their bonuses. At least that's my sort of thought on that. Storm, how about you? What are your thoughts regarding the video game industry layoffs?
It sucks. Just overall just sucks. I wish I would have or had more to say other than that and have followed it closer than that, but I just know from, the things that you have shared and our discussions offline and things, and I hope that, oh, I think the industry is leaning more towards the corporate Mongols lining their pockets, and that's unfortunate to the everyday person in the industry who's affected by that, who aren't making, $1 million salaries a year or whatnot, and not just using $1 million as a general statement. So it stinks, but maybe out of this, some more independent video games and other, developers will see more attention. I don't, overall it sucks. I hate seeing the little guy get crushed when they do that, because they could solve some of their problems if, those CEOs would take half of what they make a year, because I don't understand why anyone really needs 400,000 plus a year. Comfortably you could live on 150 a year. So I don't know. It just all stinks overall.
No, definitely really good sentiments. I feel, and it's interesting that you mentioned the whole CEO cut salary and the indie thing. So, like the current state of the video game industry and its respective layoffs, I'm wondering if this is a sign for like AA industry, like video game development, indie developers, and Japanese companies like Nintendo to gain ground. That last statement is laughable, of course, because Nintendo has led video game sales for the last like 5 to 7 years. But we had Satoru Iwata during the Wii U era, Nintendo's darkest time, literally not take a salary or take major salary cuts as the CEO of Nintendo, when rather than do layoffs, that's what they ended up doing. And Nintendo has committed a certain percentage of wage increases for their particular employees. So you've got all this darkening and all that stuff, and then you can have Nintendo pretty much coming out of this smelling like roses. And it just makes me wonder, like, with the whole Japanese aspect, you've of course got the biggest protection, and that's government regulation protects a great number of these Japanese developers, and especially its citizen developers themselves, employees. So I feel like that's a big reason why you don't hear the big amount of the layoffs in Japan, even if when they were in like recessions or downturns. And I do want to avoid the whole political aspect of government and big government, but Astrimedes, what are your thoughts about the current state video game industry? Are we going to see a renaissance of the AA game, of the indie developer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably safe to assume we'll see at least some of that. I mean, you could even argue that games like Helldivers 2 are even an early example of that in this kind of era already, coming out of, as you mentioned, sort of big bet failures like live service games and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, overall, it is pretty interesting. I'm certainly no economist or anything like that, but just from the kind of research I was doing and things I'm, pulling completely out of my keister, I would say like looking at the all the layoffs that happened, it seems like essentially, all these low just it's mergers and acquisitions really. Like now, the mergers and acquisitions where a lot of people are arguing that, very low interest loans is the reason that all these companies started growing, all these acquisitions started happening, and supposedly, with Embracer Group in particular, I at least saw some references online to a supposed deal, a prospective deal with a prospective $2 billion deal with a Saudi partner that fell through. And during, before the deal had been set, the acquisitions had already started. So when a company ends up in a position like that, of the most kind of standard, business school way to deal with that is to cut your staff. So that's exactly what we see. So I think we saw this big wave of, mergers and acquisitions, possibly fueled by low interest loans. And then you have both possible spending behavior changes after the event that shall not be named from people that maybe were no longer getting stipends or something like that, is something else that people throw out there. But one way or another, conditions change. So, or suddenly those bets don't actually pay off. And yeah, now there's this wave of layoffs. I'm hopeful that it will do kind of exactly what we've been saying, which is, prompt some games where, because as my perspective as an indie developer is like one of the biggest disadvantages you have compared to a big studio is you don't have a marketing budget, or by comparison you effectively don't have a marketing budget. And so in an era where people are less trusting of the big games, you'd hope we see, kind of more internet word of mouth groundswell of indie games that get, mentioned more often and bring more of those things to light. But as you mentioned, kind of the double A studios probably are in the best position because they do have a marketing budget of some kind by comparison. And if the big studios are now going to be in a kind of state of recession, that would be the time for those studios to act. I do really feel for all the companies that were acquired. I can only imagine from my, software development, non-game related software development day job experience, that it can't be a nice experience when you are bought by, a Sony or Microsoft or an Embracer Group, and the decisions are being made that are completely out of your hands suddenly, that once were kind of driven by your own company culture and all that sort of thing. And of course, I feel for all the developers that have, lost their jobs and livelihoods potentially. I just hope they kind of reform the smaller indie companies that make these large companies pay. And it's already been mentioned multiple times, but it is a really interesting footnote that, in addition to, kind of maybe a general tendency towards more kind of conservative behavior than some of these other companies, Nintendo, the Iwata took a 50% cut after the, failure of the Wii U, and I think it was Miyamoto took a like 30% cut also, and there were probably other executives too. But I loved seeing that in a company. It's them literally, putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what kills me, like you said, is the whole mergers thing, because a number of those companies that I mentioned that had layoffs literally had mergers, like you said with Ubisoft. Their merger or acquisition failed, and they were putting the cart ahead of the horse, and now all of a sudden they had to do a whole ton loads of like cuts, up to and including canceling projects. Like I think one of them was what was going to be the newest Time Splitters. They just had to like cancel it completely. And then you had Microsoft assuring the EU that, oh, just the acquisition of ABK is going to be fine. There's not going to be any layoffs, not anything. it was finally approved. And then what happens 3 months after the approval went through? Blizzard announced layoffs, and then Microsoft had two rounds of layoffs so far since the beginning of 2023. So it leaves a very bad taste in the mouth in general. And Astrimedes, I think he had mentioned something about Helldivers 2 not being successful.
No, the point I was making is that it may be an early example of a double A studio successful game that becomes more common now, with big studio games coming out less often and being of less interest to many people.
Because it's funny, and it's a funny footnote where that just flies in the face of the AAA studio trying to do a live service something, and then a AA one launches it and then does it so much better than a number of these AAA studios have done. Like freaking Square Enix, theirs has been poor. I think Capcom had one that was poor. Bethesda with the Redfall was awful, and then you've got Sega, who apparently was going to do one, but they canceled it outright after seeing all these failures and failures. This one worries me though, where you got a double A who saw success, and is that something that, you know, all these double A's are going to jump into? I hope that's not going to be the case. Um, Simbu, let me get your feedback on this, as well as if you want to comment on anything as to like what this could mean for the state of AAA gaming overall.
So, it's been said, it's been discussed. You know, it's the rise and fall of game development. One thing that, yes, there is a ton of layoffs, and again, my heart goes out to everyone affected. But there, you know, again, like Astrimedes was saying, with the mergers and buyouts and all this stuff, once you start consolidating all these crews together, well, the unfortunate side effect is going to be, you know, we can't house, you know, like, let's say we've got these two little studios, and that are, you know, one is a Microsoft studio, one is an ABK studio. Well, now we've merged, so let's just merge these two little studios together. We're going to take the best, or, you know, the most profitable people from those two studios, and buy to the remainder. That's something you see a lot. Not to mention, you also see a lot of these people get brought on as contractors. They get contracted to do a certain bidding. So, like, you know, you see these big hiring like these big job posts where, oh, we got this, Ubisoft is coming out and we need, you know, designers for, you know, outfit designers for a medieval sort of, you know, well, I mean, I'll just say it, but Assassin's Creed game, even though it's not expressly permitted or stated, but something in the lore of Assassin's Creed, like in the style of that. So you're thinking, all right, medieval style Assassin's Creed, possibly the next game. Well, once they bring all these people on and that job gets done, well, of course you're going to have your layoff, you know, then here come the layoffs because their contract work is up. You know, so I'm wondering, you know, the question is how many of these big, massive numbers of layoffs that we've been seeing are just contract workers who have completed their contract.
I wonder if those are actually included. I was actually thinking to myself as you said that. I would kind of assume that a contract ending its natural end would not be part of those numbers. I would hope.
Yeah, from everything that I've seen about these are actual like employees of the companies with like actually getting like checks and identified as employees. But you bring up a fantastic point, Simbo, and great counterpoint to the Bojazz that I said about Nintendo, because it sounds like I'm Nintendo fanboying Nintendo because of it being Nintendo. They're contractors. There was a whole bunch of hullabaloo like a year or two ago about how a lot of the stuff was coming to light about the way Nintendo and its employees treat the contractors that like do the hard work, the crux of the matter. And it wasn't great. It was always like dangling the carrot of being a Nintendo employee, but you're not actually gonna get the employeehood that you're trying to go for. And yeah, maybe it's a thing where a contract could end, but like imagine being dangled in a Nintendo full-time job. And I used to be a temper and an attempt to hire, and the idea of having a permanent position dangled in front of you, it sucks. Like I'm not going to mince words, and the idea that these contracts can end and your term expires. Yeah, and you just it's like, oh yeah, we'll renew, but you don't know, and just it's tough all around.
And that's kind of like an unfortunate trend in the software development industry to kind of contract work. It's something that's used in an often very inefficient in reality, but looks good on the books way by companies.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
and a lot of this stuff is, especially when you're doing the contract work, and your contract's coming up. Well, who's not to say that, there's some dirty, underhanded play practices at play too. I mean, it's so simple as the person that decides whether or not, to renew the contract. Oh, I'm sorry, I got busy, while they're sitting there playing, Fortnite or something. Oh, sorry, I slipped my mind. I was just so busy, it slipped my mind. And they let the contract expire. Well, now you can, well, if you want to come back, we have to renegotiate a whole new contract. And now that puts your contractor on the back, on their back foot.
Yeah, contractors are easy to push around for companies, and that's what they like about the relationship.
Yeah, because in the end, it's the contractors themselves are working for their customer, and because the customer is the one that's going to pay the bill, and it's that whole customer relationship. I dealt with that. Funny enough, in my previous time for the tech company I worked for, that I got laid off of. So it's interesting. I always felt for those contractors because they work their butts off for the home company, and yeah. Jamie Owls, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have any feedback or anything on this?
It just sucks. I agree with Stormrose and Hardicus of, these people's lives are, ruined, so to speak, just the everyday worker, they get crushed, and these corporate companies are making billions. And it goes to show too that, no matter where you work, there's always that risk of layoffs. And I never would have thought in, the last 5 years, never would have thought that places such as Microsoft, Sony would doing all these layoffs, because I thought, those people are secure because you're going to need like people to make video games. You need video game developers, you're going to need tech people. And I never would have thought that those people would be at risk of losing their jobs. But it just goes to show that no place is ever secure. And it's also kind of scary too, because, will this affect the video game industry in the future of how it's going to move forward? And these people are looking forward to certain games, and potentially having these games now being canceled because of the unknown future of people, uh these companies laying off these workers. So it just sucks, and it's scary all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a thing where uh you just don't the whole what is it? I've seen a few memes where you got companies saying, "Oh, we want a record growth of profit of 5%, 6%, 7%," and then the year where it goes back down to 6%. Oh, we didn't hit our targets. Appease shareholders. Let's lay the people off so that we can still hit certain target numbers in EBITDA and whatnot. And it's like it's almost inhuman, and the whole peddling of the shareholders and ensuring their happiness at the behest of thousands of employees. But unfortunately, that's capitalism. One of my
Yeah.
last remark on this is going to be I really recommend Jason Schreier's book Press Reset: Ruin and Recovery in the Video Game Industry, because it goes into detail about this before Schmovid Schmeintine times, with like other studios that have had layoffs between like 2015 and I think 2019. So it's a really interesting read. I thought it was going to be a more cheerful experience than it was. After I had gotten recently laid off from my previous tech job, I read it. Didn't help, didn't cheer me up, but in a way, it was a good eye opener for some of the more realistic expectations of the video game industry. So let's switch gears. Let's change gears up and talk about a more happier topic and something that's more of a ball of sunshine, and it's always happy things because it's really pretty animation, and that's going to be South Park. And this one is a topic suggested by Simbu, and it's a great suggestion because today, as of the day of the recording, the release, March 26th, marks the release of South Park Snow Day, their newest and 10th, that's just it, 10th franchised video game. And while the show itself has a certain reputation, especially when it first came out, again, we're just focusing on the video games first because we could all probably fall down a hole or three with the show itself. And the show itself did premiere August 1997, and it didn't take long for Matt Stone or Trey Parker to license their property out for the first video game, which released December 1998. Simply called South Park, it came out on the PS1, Nintendo 64, and PC. It was an interesting kind of product. It was sort of a first-person shooter where you play as the four kids themselves, fighting a number of enemies represented from like the first season or two. Then, like the year after that came Chef's Love Shack, which played like a hybrid quiz show and Mario Party type game. And then a couple months after that was another type of game, like a hybrid that, well, not really a hybrid, but another party game type, specifically a Mario Kart clone, South Park Rally. So, Storm, I'm gonna ask you, have you played I know you've played one of these three, but have you played, let us know which of these three that you have played. And I know that they have negative reputations just due to like critics and everything like that. Let me know which ones you've played and how much you've enjoyed them.
First of all, critics don't always know everything, you know. They like to poo-poo things that are decent. So I absolutely loved Chef's Love Shack. It is and has been one of my favorite video games. A lot of fun memories playing with you in that game. On the Nintendo 64 and also the first South Park game we had. I didn't enjoy that one as much. I remember playing the Chef's Love Shack a bit more. I never played the South Park Rally game. So that one I'll have to watch videos of, but yeah, never played that one. But Chef's Love Shack, I know that poor show. I remember the first time I saw the episode, one of the episodes, and it just made you stop and stare at the television and go, what am I watching? And it's still, some of it is like that. But anyway, as far as video games, you know, they were decent back then for what they are. And compared to the newer ones, I don't know. It's not a fair comparison, especially like Chef's Love Shack to The Stick of Truth or Fractured but Whole. Um, yeah, those are just different types of games, so I can't really compare them favorably other than graphics and whatnot, but we'll get there. And yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, and I did enjoy Chef's Love Shack a lot, and I have brief memories of playing the first South Park game also with you, but I think we would then give up and go to Chef's Love Shack before you would then beat me endlessly at Smash Brothers. So there you go.
Simbu, how about you? Have you played any of these early South Park games?
So I don't fully recall ever playing Chef's Love Shack. Growing up, my mom was a real stickler for age ratings. So it had to be age appropriate. For example, I was 6, I believe, and she would not let me watch Goosebumps because it was a Y9 TV show. If I remember that correctly, it was Y9 or Y7. So my mom was very stickler for age ratings and stuff on games. I don't remember playing Chef's Love Shack. I did, however, get to experience the first South Park game a bit and South Park Rally, predominantly from the old. This is probably why I have neck problems now. Electronic sections at big, superstores. You would go to the store, and this is back in the time where your parents could leave you in one spot, and that was the electronics section, standing there like this with controller in hand while they went and shopped. Nobody would try and take you. Everybody would leave you alone. You'd have a crowd of kids standing around you waiting for their turn, and you just enjoyed it. It was all kids. We all lived in the moment. You had the three nations or four nations at the time, all as one, sitting in that one row, and everybody, 35 years or older right now, we all have neck issues, and that's because of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I played, as Stormer said, I played the South Park, the first game, and the controls on it felt weird. Didn't really feel like the first person shooter aspects were all that great. The jokes didn't really land, but my God, the fog in some of these games. Oh, couldn't stand. That's why I liked the Chef's Love Shack. I think that gets a lot of undue hate because it didn't have any freaking fog. And so like I could actually see what I was doing. And Nintendo 64 era games were notorious for the fog. Oh man. Hardicus, early South Park games. What are your thoughts? Any play history with them?
I want to say I played the Rally one for a little bit, but it does not stick with me. So I if I did play it, it was not very much. And I had not played any of the earlier titles either.
How about you, Astrimedes?
I don't think I've played any South Park games actually. I've kind of read a bit about them, but yeah, definitely at the time, I think I was aware of these games coming out and watched South Park, but did not play these games.
Yeah, and I know Jason the 13th, who couldn't make it today. He's out saving lives with his trusty sidekick, Scooby-Doo. He did tell me ahead of time that he played South Park, the first one with me on the Nintendo 64, though I don't have a memory of it, but I'm gonna trust his memory of that. What's crazy with this is, so I mentioned that South Park Rally came out like a few months after Chef's Love Shack. So I think it was like 1999 or even 2000. We had nearly a decade long lull, no South Park games until Let's Go Tower Defense released in 2009, and then Tenenbaum's Revenge in 2012, both for the Xbox 360. And we got South Park Pinball in 2014 for all major consoles at the time as well. I'm not going to round table and ask you guys, have you guys played this? Have you get, because I feel like these aren't just well-known entries. And with that said, I want to focus on something else. It was something where I feel the quality, there's a shift in quality, because it's funny, we were talking about the layoffs thing and the Ubisoft titles. The next couple are Ubisoft based studios, and these South Park games put in a good fight for some of the best franchised video games ever released. I'm not a fan. I generally lean away from franchised video games, and these games have a great argument for being just not only the best, some of the best franchise games, but some of the best video games, period. These are the South Park Stick of Truth, released in 20 March 2014, and then South Park The Fractured Butthole, released October 2017. And they're excellent turn-based RPGs, which that totally goes towards me and like my what I like and everything. Though there's some slight variation between both entries. Stick has like a sort of like Paper Mario style of play, which Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64, excellent RPG. It's for the fantastic way that they handle that, and to think it's like Paper Mario, but with South Park and it playing like how South Park is nowadays, where a season generally is like a saga, anywhere from like 6 to 12 episodes. That's kind of like how Stick of Truth feels and plays. And Fractured, I would say, has gameplay turn-based, but feels more akin to something like Live Alive, the JRPG from 1995, remade in 2022. So Storm, I'm picking on you again first. I want you to gush about these two games. Gush about them. Let me know your thoughts about both entries. Focus on what you felt worked well. If you think there's anything that can be improved, but gush away.
Okay.
She
Okay.
hates
Well,
these games.
I do absolutely can't stand these games at all. No, actually, my first time through them, both of them was earlier 2023. I wanted to say this year, but we're no longer in 2023. So earlier 2023 on the PlayStation. Um, I just felt I love the turn-based RPG and I need to expand my horizons and play more of those, but I do like that type of game. So I was pleasantly surprised by these because it's not a first person shooter. I'm not all that great at that. But holy moly, oh my God, some of the jokes, as you know, and everyone in that group chat experienced the game with me. During some parts, I would just, text and let you all know where I was at. I did like Stick of Truth a bit more than I liked Fractured Butthole. I don't the how the gameplay and the controls and everything felt a bit more smooth in Stick of Truth than the Fractured one. However, they were both really good. I think I spent more time with Stick of Truth, and that's why it may be a favorite. Because the Fractured, I made it through in kind of a hurry ish, but I think the story in Stick of Truth felt a little bit longer than the one in Fractured. However, but the jokes and everything, just quality. And if you're a South Park fan playing, you're not going to get offended because it's South Park and it's everything you expect from, um, Matt Parker and Trey Stone and the cast of wonderful characters that they have. And it's, the Easter eggs to see them and see all the town things and being able to interact with town people. And that's different from, obviously Chef's Love Shack and the original South Park video game. And I had no idea that they had that many video games for them. Way to go. Because 10 isn't a lot, but it is a lot for a TV show, I think so. But these latest two entries, yeah, they're fabulous and fun, and I could see myself replaying them, and I think I may go through them again after, with Snow Day and whatnot, just to, I played them digitally, and I think I do want to have the hard copies in my collection, so I'll probably be looking for those because they are just quality games, given just ignoring South Park for what South Park is. The Stick of Truth was fun to go through. The little side quests are fun. The battles are fun. They're balanced out. You're not, terribly frustrated. Yeah, some of the bosses are tough and you die and come back, but you're not constantly frustrated with the game and need a pause from it. It makes you want to keep playing. So, and Fractured had that as well. None of them were, overly frustrating to get through. So I think they're both good. And if you haven't played them, I recommend, because you're missing out. And unless you get easily offended by that type of humor, then don't. But if you're not, then you should definitely check them out. But they are definitely not for children. They're not a game to play around your child. And, that's target audience is adult. So just because it's a cartoon, it's adult cartoon. Remember that. but they're fun games.
And Jamie Owls, I remember you saw me play them as well. What was your thoughts as you saw me playing some of the scenes, like the shrunken down underpants gnomes scene, and there's a certain thing that your main character's parents are doing literally in the background while you're trying to fight underpants gnomes, stuff like that. What was your thoughts as you saw me play through these RPGs?
It was like, wow. I did not. I expected it, but it's like, my God. Holy moly. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I never played any of them. Honestly, I have no interest. Years ago when I was a kid, I tried getting into like the show, and of course, like Stormrosesky said, they're not meant for children. I was in the 4th grade when I try watching them, realizing this is not the cartoon I should be watching. But yeah, it's like definitely not my humor. So definitely be taking a pass on those games. Yeah.
Now, Simbu, do you have anything to rebut what Storm had said, or do you have anything to add?
Well, let's just say I absolutely hate these games.
All I saw was Coon for a second, and then something shiny.
Yeah, they were blending in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my background.
Oh.
It's
Oh, you got this.
There's-
Oh, the stick of
there's
truth.
Stick
Okay.
of Truth, sealed PS3 copy that I was able to get,
Nice.
and then the the steelbook case hard copy of Fractured.
Very cool.
They, as we mentioned, they are they are an RPG style turn-based combat, but the best thing about them is that they are RPG light. And by when I say RPG light, for those who may not know what an RPG light is versus a regular RPG, you don't have to focus on like tons of stats and modifiers and okay, like these enemies, like I need to build my team this way to fight these enemies, build my team this way to fight these enemies. I got to have this person in my party in order to fight this person, things like that. It's pretty basic. You can go through the game with the same party the entire game if you want. Granted, there's going to be, but again, it has an RPG elements in it because certain characters are better for certain fights, but the game doesn't roadblock you if you don't use that character. As you see with some RPGs where if you don't have this specific ability or you don't have a specific character, this fight is going to be incredibly painful to beat. It's a great, again, it is a mature, great, it is an adult rated game for a reason. If you know South Park, you know why. Stick and Fractured were, I'd say roughly around 8 to 10 hours ish long, approximately, for gameplay, which is roughly the amount of a season's content worth of South Park. Especially nowadays, because they're doing short, at the time they started coming out, they were doing shorter seasons instead of like 20 something episode seasons. You'd get, like 14, 15 episode seasons. So, but it tells an entire story. It tells an entire season's worth of content in one game. One of the greatest things about South Park, Stick and Fractured, is we finally got South Park roadmapped. Stick introduced the actual roadmap of South Park. What does South Park actually look like on the map? Where is everything in relation to each other?
And it needs to be said that these games actually had Matt Stone and Trey Parker involved in them. Both Fracture and the upcoming Snow Day. They were literally involved with the development, not just like voices and whatnot, but they were consulted. And I think it's part of the reason why a couple of seasons for South Park, either the TV show didn't air, or like there might not have been one or two in a year, or they were shortened. And that's because they're working on these video games. These video games are meant to, I feel like they're meant to be like supplemental seasons. Like Simbu said, you're basically getting a season's worth of South Park with this. And for somebody who isn't amenable to like that sort of RPG like gameplay, Simbu making great point after point where it's very friendly. And one of the sticking points with RPGs is how long they are, 40, 50, 70, 80 hours. No, that's not what these games are meant to be. It's meant to be an 8 to 12 hour experience that's digestible for the average game player that's harried or on the go.
Yeah, I just want to comment what you said about them working with these games. It's actually they're quoted as actually saying that so we mentioned, all the South Park games that have come out, and that before you get to Stick of Truth, there were however many before that, single digit, but a good handful of releases before that one. But they had said, either Matt Stone or Trey Parker in an interview, at least one, that they had waited to work on the games kind of directly themselves based on South Park until technology got to a point where the games could look exactly like the show. And they actually approached Obsidian so it's like, you're exactly right in that they were spending a ton of their kind of time, effort, and investment on these games. But I mean, it's almost, it's no wonder you look at all the South Park game entries, and the two were the creators. It was kind of literally their idea, their script, kind of they were actually working directly on the games, are probably going to be the best in the bunch.
Absolutely. Hardicus, since you're a big RPG game player like myself, have you played these? If not, any interest?
Yeah, I played both of them. Stick of Truth was excellent. As Storm Rose said, like the humor, absolutely not for kids. Like from the bedroom scene you mentioned to the difficulty slider.
That's
I mean
that's
that,
within minutes of starting too.
and that's how I knew it was going to be. Like, I mean, I was just like, oh my god, seriously? Like, you
Don't
knew
forget the
that it was
Lemmy
going to
Winks.
be one of those kind of games, especially coming from their minds. But the first one, thought it was excellent. Second one, I got a little bored of near the end and just kind of wanted it to end. But story wise, gameplay, both were really good games. Um, like Simbu said, the RPG light elements kept it where I think it's a little bit more open to someone who hasn't played RPG games could easily get into it. And so if you were just a South Park fan, you could easily pick this up and pretty much play it from start to finish without any real difficulty.
And I feel like that Matt and Trey have a uh, pursuant to what Astrimedes was saying, that they have a desire to be able to provide it's like such a quality experience. When Stick came out and I played it, I played it when it came out like almost immediately, and I had I'm going to say foolish high hopes that other properties like The Simpsons would do something like this, where they could do something where they flesh out something like Springfield and you can play in there, and it's like an RPG, and have like that sort of story. And then that's when, like, I think a year or two later, Simpsons released another game um, that made them a lot more money, probably more money than this ever could for the franchise. That being Simpsons Tapped Out. And I feel like you've got a set of people who want to make something because it's fun, or they're going to make a statement. They're the artists, the Matt and Trey, and then sometimes you just have artists that will sell their stuff to make the money. And my whole it kind of made me think that that's what Simpsons was with the whole Tapped Out thing. And since then, I haven't seen any good, strong video game within the Simpsons franchise since Simbu had mentioned Hit and Run way back in the beginning of the podcast here. And it's just so um dispiriting, but because like you got South Park that can make something so good, and you got other properties that if they could just follow that same kind of model, they could they could make something so well. So surprise question for you guys. What franchise would you want to see make something like this, where like it's the heart and soul, it's a genre that plays well with it? Storm, what are your thoughts? What franchise do you like that you'd like to see? And why is it Golden Girls?
You know, honestly, that would be awesome. Oh, but that would, I could see a Golden Girls trivia or something. I could not see turn-based. I don't know, like what enemy they would have. Um,
Danny
honestly,
Spivak.
yeah. Stanley Spornak. Oh goodness. You know, when I say Doctor Who, and I don't think there are any other than there might be some like independent Doctor Who games, and I know there's some mobile games, but they're more like Bejeweled type game where you're have to match a certain number of gems in order to progress and through and blah blah blah. But something like for consoles, I would love to see a Doctor Who um game based on, some of my favorite doctors from their reboot of the series, not from the original series that started now, I think 50 or 60 years ago, but newer the newer generation of doctors I would like to see.
That's cool. Um, Hardicus, how about you?
Uh, I think there's two that came to mind when you originally asked the question. The first one is like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Having a turn base, you've got your party of 4 ready to go, but you also have, extra characters that could play as. I think to really make it more interesting though, instead of just having, because I mean, all the turtles are pretty much melee fighters. So I think having something like the Turtles in Time, where they go to like medieval and Donatello learns magic and things like to expand their power base a little bit more would be kind of interesting. The other one, and you can tell I'm a big '80s cartoon nut here. Something like He-Man. And you've got a wide variety, wide cast of characters to pick from, all different kinds of tool sets between utility. You've got the sorceress, you've got He-Man as your tank. You've got a lot of characters to pick from for that too. So I think it's a little bit different, but I think both of those franchises could easily slip into a game like that.
Uh, Jamie Owls, how about you? What sort of franchise would you like to see get a video game similar to how Stick of Truth was, with the high quality and ease of learning turn-based RPG?
Honestly, something Disney related. Like if you have all like the princesses together in a turn-based style RPG, like you have Belle, you have um Anna, Cinderella, or even just the Mickey Mouse gang, like that kind of style.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I don't recall there being a turn-based like Mickey Mouse Disney type game. The only
No,
RPG I
There,
can think of is Kingdom Hearts, and that's action RPG.
yeah,
there
and I
actually
was
is
like,
one.
Oh,
oh,
what was it, Hardicus?
I don't remember the name of it, and I don't remember if it was. And I'm sorry to talk over you there, Jamie Ells.
that's okay.
There was a mobile game where you collected Disney characters, and I don't remember it being a true turn-based, but I remember it being like maybe an auto turn-based kind of thing. But there
Hmm,
was a mobile game that was similar to that.
interesting. For me, I know I mentioned Simpsons. The only other thing I'd love to see a turn-based thing, uh, Harry Dresden and the Dresden Files. I think something like that like screams to have like a really good turn-based game where like your party changes depending on like what part of the book or story or and then which book you're in, and as you proceed forward with the overall lore. It could be like a long running thing. I'd love to see that because I love Jim Butcher's Dresden verse, as I think it's called. Astrimedes, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I theoretically maybe was just thinking of, my favorite kind of character-based series, whatever, and I love The Sopranos a little too much as a series, and theoretically, David Chase, the creator, gets involved. I could see doing a weird thing where you kind of like use the game as an excuse to kind of like look at if the characters had made different sort of character development choices. Like, a lot of the shows about people kind of battling their inner demons and, usually losing and kind of thing. You could maybe do something where, you have some kind of story arc and you can maybe play as different characters and sort of affect their outcome. And the creator could essentially be using sort of like the events of the series as like a launching off point to then make kind of like a choose your own adventure version of the ways the series could have played out differently. And then people could get their no black at the end ending because your individual run could have a real ending. So everyone can't complain about the famous Sopranos ending that no one liked that I actually loved. More
Spoiler
like
alert.
more like off the wall. Yeah, the spoiler is the screen goes black at the end. But the weirder kind of thought process is you could take a show like Forensic Files, where so me and my wife have watched way too much of this show. Forensic Files is murder investigation show, true crime, just kind of very clinical, straightforward presentation of the facts from sort of murder mysteries, whatever. I could see a good licensed game implementation of being like you almost take a game like Ace Attorney games or something as an example, transform it into like a turn-based thing where you use your evidence and your tools. And for example, luminol is mentioned constantly in the series. You could honor the series by having the same sort of investigation techniques come up constantly. I'm not sure if
Interesting.
I'm being sarcastic or not with this game suggestion anymore.
I was gonna say CSI did a mobile game where you could, it shows you the crime scene. You have to investigate the crime scene and find the different stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure something along those lines have been done before. If we're talking about licensing, you could wrap it up like taking a specific era crime show and you tie everything to the technology and all that of the time.
Now, as long as you get to play as Mark Harmon and it's an NCIS turn-based RPG,
Yes.
then okay, I'm sold.
And whenever your teammates get hit, you have to smack them in the back of the head.
That works. Or you could even have like a house-based turn-based RPG. You say it's not lupus, then
There you go.
however worst degraded way you can you can offend your own party members after they attempt an attack, which is their diagnosis. It buffs your ability to then give your diagnosis, which provides crit damage to diagnose the enemy, which is the patient.
House gets an XP multiplier when he's insulting his coworkers.
Absolutely. Reduce cost in casting magic, i.e., taking him out for scans. Or I guess,
Let's do monk too.
I guess going out for a referral is a summon then, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Simbu, how about you? What franchise favorite you'd love to see in like a stick of truth type turn-based game?
All right, so I'm just gonna throw an '80s one out there real quick first. Not my choice, but if we're talking for pure amount of options and content, G.I. Joe would be a good one. There's a lot of characters to choose from, a lot of different enemies to use, and just a lot of lore in and of itself.
It bugs me that hasn't been a thing yet. I know why it hasn't been a thing, but it bugs me because that's such a good suggestion.
It really hasn't been a thing. I'm surprised.
No.
Sorry.
Just normal
I'm
like
really
action
surprised.
games, but nothing RPG for GI Joe to my knowledge.
Interesting.
Right. Obviously, Star Wars has a turn-based battle, turn-based combat battle simulator thing on for your phone. I can't remember what it's called. I would actually like to see a like triple or double A, actual like game, like turn-based RPG, or even a turn-based tactical RPG for Star Wars. I think that would be, again, same concept. You have all these different heroes, you have all these different enemies. There's plenty of content and lore behind all of it for you to flesh out an entire game for that.
Apparently, there is a tabletop RPG for GI Joe.
Yeah, I saw
just
that
discovered, which is funny, and it does back up what you're saying. The material's there.
Yeah,
Right.
and like the NES games for GI Joe were absolutely fantastic. It's another one of the ones that's like, how is this franchise game so good? And so like I'm surprised that that hasn't been a thing. But yeah, I definitely agree with you that like Star Wars could be a good one too. They could maybe even do it like a pixelated style as like a throwback or a demake and like really lean heavily into that to tell like episodes 4 through 6 if they wanted to retell those, though the universe itself is so grand and large that they could do their own original story and have legs. So as we finish things up here again, as I mentioned, today's the day. Snow Day comes out. Simbu, what are you most excited about with South Park Snow Day?
So first and foremost, it's multiplayer. So I'm very excited to play with friends. Storm and I have been biting our thumbs clean to the bone all day because we have both uh, sworn to each other that we are not going to start it up until we have finished recording this episode. So I know this has been just as hard on her as it hasn't been on me. But I'm excited to play, a campaign, play through this as a shared experience. I've been staying away pretty much from, leaks or spoilers or reviews or anything like that. I've caught a couple things. It says the game is fairly short. If you take out all the cutscenes, a couple people were crying that it's a short, it's like only 6 hours of gameplay. But to me, honestly, with a multiplayer game like this, that could lend itself to replayability, and ease of replayability, versus like Stick of Truth or Fractured, where you're going to have to sink some time into this game. It's not as much as like a Final Fantasy, but it's a long haul commit. It's a longer haul commit than something like this. Not to mention it is a roguelike, in the sense of the encounters. So like it's not scripted battles, similar to like Stick of Truth or Fractured, where it was more, okay, this is what these enemies, are always going to, this battle, these enemies are always going to spawn here. This one, they're always going to spawn here. They're probably going to, for the most part, they're going to do the same sort of tactics, the same sort of thing. Unless, of course, even if you were to bull rush one of them and knock them back, well, guess what? Their thing is to still come forward and be front and center, versus, instead of like, oh, I'm going to hang back and fight from back here. So the encounters are going to be a little more roguelike. In the 3D landscape is going to be fun. Inferno Fox, I sent you that video. I think I sent it to Storm too, where it was talking about how to bring this 2D game into the 3D world and do it right. Because as we all know, everybody in, all the kids in South Park's legs are only like an inch long. So some real cool, thing that, when they're running through the snow, like they're pushing the snow and you see all the little snowballs like pushing around with them, and things like that. So I'm interested really also to see character creation. See how well our AI teammates Storm are going to do, because there is going to be a minimum of 4 people at all times, whether it's players or bots.
And we were talking a little bit before the cast, and were you guys, Storm, you were planning on maybe live casting this on your channel of Twitch of Stormrosesky? Did I hear that right? Possibly.
Yes, it will be easy to get there hooked up. I can also, maybe throw a couple of minutes up on YouTube as well.
Yeah, so
I
you
can
guys
switch back and forth.
watching, listening, make sure you check out the actual live content. By the time this podcast is uploaded, they will Storm and Simbu will probably be in the middle of playing or possibly finishing. But the wonderful thing with live gameplay on Twitch or YouTube is that you can, I believe you can catch saved live broadcasts. Am I right, Storm?
Oh, I have that set up on YouTube. I do not have that set up for Twitch because, yeah, I didn't set. No, not on Twitch. The recordings, once I'm done, they're not there, but on YouTube, they are. So I will do a few minutes on YouTube so people listening later can see it. So I'll start there.
Yeah, so you definitely want to make sure you check that out. It's definitely something that it's exciting to see a franchise property whom had made such excellent games as of recent work like Stick and Fractured be able to make a new entry. So we'll have to see. Definitely have to have you guys let us know your thoughts on that. And just in general, a huge thanks for everybody here joining us as we discussed something not so fun, but really worth discussing in the overall video game lexicon, being the whole layoffs thing, and something that is fun, South Park. So again, huge thanks to Storm, Simbu, Hillbilly, Astrimedes, and Jamie Owls. And you can catch us again next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks again.